Again to another episode. Yes, we're still here, the Grassy Knoll. And with us today are the brothers Collins. We're going to talk about a particular article that can be found on conspiracyarchive.com. We'll talk about more about that later. There's something I just want to share with everybody, and I think it's important. I think all of us sometimes feel what we would call a bad moon on the rise. Your spirit's trouble, whatever it is. Last night it rained all night, which is unusual for Florida, really, and that's okay. I mean, that was kind of peaceful. But I got up at 4 o'clock, and I just wasn't feeling good. So I knocked off some articles that I had to for work, and I went out for a walk this morning, which I never did before the show. Still feeling bad. I started hearing sirens and such, and as my walk would take me right out to a place where there was a head-on crash. I don't like to gawk at stuff. I really don't have the stomach for it either. But I'm saying to myself, I bet those people that were involved in that today didn't think this would be the last day of their lives, or if they do survive, that their life will be forever changed. And so I don't know if I was picking up on something, and I don't know if it's over yet. But, folks, I tell you what, you never know. You don't know. So I just want to share that with everybody because you know to make the most out of every day, but we're all guilty, of, not doing that. So anyway, folks, I'm asking you to carry that with you today, just to do that. Before we bring Paul and Philip on, I do want to read something for their benefit and also from a listener who's pretty tuned in, and we'll only briefly touch this, and guys, we'll get into your work, which I'm looking very much forward to. I get an email that says the 192nd meeting of the United Nations General Assembly started with a speech by Kofi Annan, whatever you want to call him, bidding a farewell to the General Assembly with an impassioned plea for Middle East peace, and had a spirited defense for the UN in which he was the Grand Poobah for 10 years. It goes, just another reminder of the real catastrophes that lie ahead. Next cue, Bill Clinton. Interesting. I mean, can you see this as a 1-2 punch with a Hillary president and him, the Security General in the UN?
Yeah. It's very, coincidence. And it's interesting that he would, suggest that there's catastrophes ahead. Well, gee, how did you know that?
Well, actually, I got to clarify. It was the emailer that posited, is this some kind of clue? Because wherever he goes, there's a body count.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
And this individual also has inside information, having been in the military in Europe, about the Ron Brown situation. Mm-hmm. And I hope that individual gets a chance to come on. No, he didn't come out and say it. I mean, he's the greatest liar in the world. We always say he'll talk the paint off the porch.
Oh, sure.
But he's one of the nastiest guys out there, man.
Yeah. I mean, but you think about how easy it'll be to get the internationalist, globalist through with Hillary in the presidential seat and Bill Clinton, her hubby, in the Secretary General seat. It'd be pretty much like greasing the wheels there of globalism.
You hit it right on the head. And of course, as you know, you're not Democrats or Republicans. I don't think we all know the show, but I tell you what, they will lead Democrats right down that road because they are the ones that are most willing to bite.
Oh, absolutely.
On the we'll be one big happy family.
Absolutely, and you can never really underestimate the common voter's intelligence either. I mean, if voting worked, then it would be illegal.
Exactly.
But people, of course, are so fed up with Bush that they're going to play the false alternative card. And I don't know how many people say, "Well, I'm voting Democrat," as though that were the solution. And it was just like with the last election, people who went out voting Kerry. I mean, the choice is skull or bones, folks. There's no.
No, there's no choice. No, you have the appearance of choice, and you don't have it.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we're going to talk about an article whose main title is "Nothing Beyond the Flesh: The Theocracy of Prima Materia." All right, now look. Now, I guess this is one of the subheads, okay?
Yeah.
And you guys did it again. Nobody I know in the world could get in the title and the subtitle both Latin and German words. So what is this, the anatomy of?
It's the anatomy of a Weltanschauungskrieg, and that's basically German for worldview warfare. Believe it or not, that was also part of the Nazi Germany's pretty much their psychological warfare lexicon. It was adopted by OS here in the United States, where they turned the word Weltanschauungskrieg into psychological warfare. But basically, interestingly enough, it just means a war between worldviews, between outlooks on the world.
Might we also assume that this is elitist ideologies at battle here?
Absolutely. Basically, the two diametrically opposed camps that humanity can be evenly divided into, and this is illustrated perfectly by the philosophical milieu of ancient Greece, is the spiritual and theistic worldview. That is, that there's a spiritual reality, that there's a transcendent reality that's outside the ontological plane of the physical universe, and that there's a God. And then, of course, the anti-spiritual, anti-theistic worldview, which holds that the ontological plane of the physical universe is basically all there is, that it constitutes the sum total of reality itself, and that there is no God. Now, what I basically posit in this thesis is that the anti-theistic, anti-spiritual worldview was intentionally designed so as to create and introduce a new theocratic order to humanity. And this becomes evident when one considers the fact that most ostensibly secular movements, be it communist, Marxist of one variety or another, or fascist, sociologically, all those movements have behaved like religions. And how does one explain this paradox? Well, that's what I tried to do in this article. Basically, astute researchers will identify the Luciferian belief system and the para-elite socio-political utopian heritage and their metaphysical doctrine of materialism. Essentially, the Luciferian religion is veiled in secularism, which constitutes the dominant cultural milieu of the 20th and the 21st century. But the rise of this new religio-political order was facilitated by the promulgation of scientific materialism. And I submit to you and your listeners that the promulgation of scientific materialism was designed to perpetrate a politically, socially, and ideologically expedient metaphysical paradigm. Now, this paradigm, and this is key, this is crucial, this paradigm emptied the traditional Abrahamic faiths of their metaphysical contents and basically transplanted them within the ontological plane of the physical universe. Now, with the heavens eviscerated, the metaphysical contents that were traditionally considered suprasensible, that is, above the senses, outside of the five senses of sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell, all those concepts that were suprasensible and transcended all of a sudden became corporeal. They became physical. For instance, the eschaton, or the end of heaven and hell, was relocated within the temporal spatial cosmos. More significantly, God was transplanted within man himself. Thus, we have a secular religion, and this religion was secular humanism, and its religious zealots were socio-political utopians. Now, of course, socio-political utopianism has been promulgated under several banners, communism, fascism, etc., but ostensibly these movements were secular in character. However, sociologically, they behaved just like religions, and this is because they were derivative of an older occult religion. In fact, these secular movements find their origins with occult secret societies, which wished to see their eschatological vision imposed upon the rest of humanity. In particular, there was Freemasonry, which acted as the retainer of the ancient mystery religion that originated in Egypt and Babylon and in Mesopotamia 6,000 years ago.
All right, let me hold you right there if I could.
Sure.
Just to touch base, I think some people out there might be saying also, all right, give me a translation here, but does it not seem that these movements all seek to really make the state the religion?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting that you should bring that up because, as Anthony Sutton pointed out, both fascism and communism, both Marx and Hegel, or Marx and Hitler, find their origins with Hegel, find their foundations with Hegel. And Hegel, of course, when he developed the dialectic. The dialectic initially was a purely spiritual concept. He was basically developing his own, religion that was derivative of these older occult religions of an emergent deity within man. And what Marx did was what the socio-political utopians of his time did, what these basically, you could call them secular Gnostics did, was he, again, emptied this religion, this faith in the emergent deity of man, Hegel's Weltgeist. He emptied it of its metaphysical contents and took that dialectic and transplanted it within the framework of the physical universe. So suddenly the dialectic was no longer the process by which Hegel's so-called world spirit helped man evolve. Now it was basically a strategy of ideological divide and conquer. But absolutely, both communism and fascism, which have their foundations in Hegel, harken back to this tradition, this neo-Gnostic tradition of basically transplanting these concepts here in the physical universe.
And your listeners might also be wondering, did this whole Hegelian activism get transplanted here with our own Western elites? And the answer is yes. J.P. Morgan, who I'm sure you know, stranger to in the intrigues that he was involved in, he attended only one major university to speak of in his whole entire life for about 2 to 3 years over in Germany at the University of Göttingen. And at that university, at that time, it was just a hotbed of Hegelian activism. And if you wonder if it rubbed off on him, all you have to do is go and read Tragedy and Hope, which was written by Carroll Quigley. Carroll Quigley, essentially, it was, if you want to, in a nutshell, if you want to describe him best, he was a professor who was basically acting as a kind of archival curator for the power elite. He even admitted as much in his book that he had been privy to the secret documents of the various organizations that had begun with people like Rhodes and the other disciples of Ruskin.
Milner and them.
Exactly. But anyways, in that book, Quigley makes it clear that Morgan loved to play both sides against one another, and while being a capitalist, his firm, the Morgan firm, he points out in the book, was busy building up the left here in the United States and building up those who we would consider to be anti-communist, and many of the people at his firm were Skull and Bones, and the Skull and Bones influence at the Morgan firm came through, I believe it was Henry Davison, who was an initiate to the Order of Skull and Bones, and the Skull and Bones basically shares the same idea as Hegelianism, which probably came through them through an Illuminist influence. We believe them to be little more than an Illuminist subsidiary, and the Illuminists believed that in the words of Adam Weishaupt, that the ends justifies the means, and that saying basically captures the same idea as Hegelianism, and all these Skull and Bones individuals at Morgan's firm were instrumental in building up the left wing here in this country, and the left wing of Morgan's dialectic. So we know that Hegelianism rubbed off on J.P. Morgan, and that Hegelian tradition probably is with them to this very day, although Morgan has, the old man Morgan, of course, passed on, and the Morgan Bank has since merged with Chase to become Morgan Chase. That Hegelianism is still is still there. And so we know that the whole idea of Hegelianism is also prevalent amongst the Western elites.
At any rate, so you have these movements such as communism and fascism, which find their origins with occult secret societies, in particular Freemasonry. And of course, these ostensibly secular movements still behaved sociologically like religions. But Freemasonry, out of which these movements in part sprung, acted as the retainer for the mystery religion that originated in Mesopotamia 6,000 years ago. And this religion was pantheism. And pantheism holds that God is an impersonal force, and this force was an immanent energy that channeled itself through all things, rocks, trees, clouds, animals, man, and of course the physical cosmos itself. Now this doctrine of immanentism acted as the perfect conceptual segue for atheistic materialism, because it relocated God within the ontological plane of the physical universe. It provided the metaphysical foundation for the primacy of matter, or what you could call it in Latin, everything sounding more profound in Latin, Prima Materia, the primacy of matter.
But doesn't it also denigrate God?
Yes, it does, absolutely. And most importantly, it provides the conceptual segue for transplanting God, no longer as God in the heavens, but transplanting him within man. But materialism was a core metaphysical precept of occult Freemasonry. For instance, Freemasonry's patron deity, the great architect of the cosmos, was an impersonal force immanent to the physical universe. Now, automatically, one identifies a religious continuum here. The Masonic architect was merely another incarnation of the pantheistic God force of the ancient mystery religions. Now, this continuity of thought was a direct corollary of operative Freemasonry's co-opting by Italian humanists in the 1500s. The operative Freemasonry of the Renaissance, all of a sudden, under the direction of these Italian humanists, became the speculative Freemasonry of the Enlightenment. And of course, out of the Enlightenment would come the French Revolution. Right. But at the core of the humanist doctrine of the new speculative Freemasonry was the anthropocentric dictum of Protagoras, and that is, man is the measure of all things. Now, encapsulated within this dictum, you'll find a theme common to the ancient mystery religions, and that is the deification of man. Because after all, a being that can act as the arbiter of its own moral precepts would qualify as God. Now, the ancient mystery religions circulated an inner doctrine of apotheosis, that is, self-deification, becoming God. But such a doctrine was, of course, the logical outgrowth of pantheistic thought. If God were in all things, then all things were God, including man himself. And man was a God in the process of becoming, this incremental, gradual process of becoming God. Now, this is where the belief in evolution actually began. It did not begin with Charles Darwin. It began with the ancient mystery religions of antiquity. According to the mystery religions, man was undergoing a process of gradual development, an incremental march toward becoming God. Now, throughout the late 19th century, historians have noted this explosion in belief systems concerned with emergent deities. For instance, there was Auguste Comte's Humanite, there was Hegel's Weltgeist, there was Nietzsche's Übermensch, and other doctrines of emergent deities within man. It was also during this period that spelling man with a capital M, so as to connote some sort of intrinsic divinity, became big amongst these theoreticians. But all Charles Darwin did was reiterate this religion of apotheosis within the metaphysical garb of naturalism. So all of a sudden, you have the theocratic power structures, which required myths and required basically these elaborate mythologies to keep the masses in line and at the same time legitimate their power elites.
All right, can I stop?
Sure.
All right, hang on to that thought. I got a bunch of questions. I just want to clear the deck with if I could.
Absolutely.
We talked about this in times gone by. We talk about it now. Everything you're talking about, whether it's apotheosis or deification, self-deification, first of all, is this not central to most occult religions, very flattering to the human being? And secondly, is this not exactly the sin that Satan committed to have himself exposed?
You're very astute for recognizing that. As Whittaker Chambers said, Whittaker Chambers being a former member of the Communist Underground here in the United States, he said that humanism is nothing new. It's basically the second oldest religious faith on the face of the planet. And it all began when the serpent whispered to to Eve under the tree of knowledge of good and evil, when he whispered to her, "Ye shall be as God." And this is why these belief systems, these secular movements, which have been premised upon secular humanism, in particular the Enlightenment, and of course then out of the Enlightenment comes all the socialist totalitarian movements of the late 19th and early 20th century, such as communism and fascism. That's why sociologically they behave like religions. They are premised upon a religion, and it's an ancient religion. It's an old religion that was circulated within the occult secret societies out of which these secular movements sprang.
Well, this is why we look at the elites, and we could throw a few names out like Kissinger in particular. They all act as demigods or gods, and with that comes this repugnance for we the little people.
That's right.
Well, when you bring up Kissinger and you talk about repugnance for the little people, Kissinger, I'm going to have to paraphrase the man because I don't have the quote in front of me, during the Vietnam era, referred to American soldiers as dumb animals.
Yep.
And, this philosophy basically is what was driving that point of view with Kissinger. You'll also recall Robert McNamara. Robert McNamara was an adherent to this belief system as well. He had a Project 100,000, and this Project 100,000 basically made sure that poor blacks and poor white families from the ghettos that their children, that their sons who had failed their IQ test, still made it into the military and made it into the worst combat over in Vietnam, so that McNamara's rich friends off at college and the children of his rich buddies didn't have to go over and face the same fate. And he also hit the fact the toxicity of Agent Orange, and knew that it was being sprayed on our soldiers over there. And so you see the same kind of philosophical belief with McNamara and Kissinger, and so it's there, and it causes a kind of repugnance for the common person.
Also, I want to throw this out to you, and I think I better mail this to you. There is a book which I've mentioned throughout the years on the show, Ominous Parallels, the end of...
Peikoff.
All right, there you go. Now, Peikoff, by the way, as you know, is a Rand objectivist.
Right.
Thinks religion is an opiate. Okay, we'll give him that one.
Yeah, sure.
But have you read that book?
Portions of it and everything. Interesting also. I mean, he does an excellent job. Job.
And he did this in 81. He called it exactly 20 years before.
Yeah.
And this is what I want to throw out to you. He said that you can find a country's proclivity to fascism in the philosophy they embrace. And he said the telling continuum is Kant, I think, then to Hegel. It's from Plato to Kant to Hegel. Do I have that? What were the time periods for Hegel and Kant? Are they contemporaries?
I think Kant is a little bit before Hegel. He was an Enlightenment thinker. So, but Kant really rubbed off on Hegel a great deal.
And he said that's where the roots are in it. And he said, and that's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what's happening here, although people don't necessarily recognize this, and we'll have to probably get into this at a later date with another article that I'm trying to finish right now. But it's followed that line in the United States to where we've had a descent in fascism.
Yeah.
But Huey Long once pointed out, he once asserted, whether you like the man or hate the man, many people believed that he was a demagogue. Other people considered him to be a populist hero. He pointed out that fascism, when it first appears here in the United States, would appear as anti-fascism. And thus we have George W. today going around and decrying the terrorist network as being Islamo-fascism.
Mm-hmm. And also, I will ship that out to you. I think you're going to probably wind up doing some work, which that would probably be a good book from which to draw information. Also, you hit it on the head with Quigley, being a scribe, more or less, and telling the story they would allow to get out. And what's so interesting, I don't know if you know about this, but at the same time that Rhodes was getting his round table together, there also sprang up a group called the Pilgrims Society, of which he never mentions a word. So what I'm saying to you is, and if you heard me scrambling around here, you should have seen me, I was deft, as I moved just within the reach of the phone cord to grab a book from the shelf. And it was Tragedy and Hope. And I took a look in the back, and I'm going, did he ever mention anything? I don't think he did. Or an Anglo-American establishment. Never says a thing about the Pilgrim Society. Why is this important? Just like you said, they let him say what he said.
Absolutely.
But he didn't give us the whole deal.
No.
And I had somebody on the show who blamed it all on Rhodes and Rothschild. And that's what they want you to do.
Well, another thing that Quigley never mentions in his book is the fact that Rhodes had joined a chapter of Freemasonry, the Apollo chapter, and he says that he never took it that serious, and he just used their secrecy and their organizational structure to create his own secret society. But it's obvious that the Weltanschauung, that the philosophical point of view that Phil is describing had obviously rubbed off on Rhodes.
And he said something along the lines, and of course almost a century before Kissinger, when he talked about America being a dumb beast to fight the wars that Britain's best blood could no longer, because there was a great deal of attrition. And folks, if you want to see that comment that the Collins brothers refer to about the military being dumb pawns, I believe you can find that in Final Days by Woodward and Bernstein. Does that ring a bell with you guys?
That's the one.
All right, listen, we're at the bottom of the hour, and I just want to say we're talking with the brothers Collins, Philip, and Paul. Guys, why don't you tell us right now what's out there? Right now we're dealing with an article that you do have up on Conspiracy Archive. It's called Nothing Beyond the Flesh, the Theocracy of Prima Materia. So give us a rundown now about what you got out there and how people can access it.
Sure. Well, basically, Paul and I currently have out an expanded, revised edition of The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship. This was published in July 2006, not the 2004 version. This is the 2006 version. You'll be able to distinguish it from the 2004 version because it has a distinctly different cover, which was tastefully designed by Terry Melanson, who keeps the Conspiracy Archive and has given us a page at Conspiracy Archive, which you can reach at www.conspiracyarchive, all one word, /commentary with a capital C /Collins with a capital C.php. Make sure you capitalize those C's or you'll wind up going somewhere on the internet where you can find out Ashley Simpson's fashion tips.
Yeah.
But you can get the book via www.booksurge.com. And also, Paul and I are currently a regular columnist for the ACL Report, which is the official publication of the nationally syndicated radio talk show, Closer Look. And you can get the magazine, get that publication at www.4acloserlook.com.
Also, two things. One, you have somebody who holds you in great esteem in Texas, a gentleman who cited, and he was wondering, is there ever going to be a chance that the book might find its way, I think, either into an ebook or a PDF?
We're thinking about that and everything.
Okay.
Actually,
Bill Kennedy, who wrote Lucifer's Lodge,
right? Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're acquainted with it.
Mm-hmm.
We were on his show, and he began to talk about how he put out his newer book as an ebook first, and was able to raise enough money to put it out in a print form. Mm-hmm. And so after he shared that little strategy with us, we thought, well, too late, but we can do the reverse.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of us becoming computer savvy enough to get it done and everything. But like everything, we're hoping to get that's that's pretty much on the drawing board. Right
I might be able to help you out with that, and I'll tell you off mic. So.
Okay, sure thing.
Also, do you have anything new in the hopper?
I do. I got an article I'm working on right now, and I was up late last night working on this. This is how big this is. It's going to be in the ACL report, and I'll probably have it up, of course, at Terry Melanson's site as well, and we'll have to talk about it at a later date. All I can say is that it talks about how this government is basically in bed with the enemy that it claims to be fighting.
Right.
How Huey Long hit it the nail on the head when he said that fascism would first appear here in the United States as anti-fascism because the president claims to be fighting Islamofascism, and meanwhile he seems to be in the bed with several fascist interests himself, and it begins. The story begins with an individual by the name of Grover Norquist, who is basically part of the GOP's Muslim outreach, and goes all the way to a company here in the United States known as PTEC, and it's going to be one of the larger articles and more informative articles that I've come out with.
Well, one of my favorite photos is a shrub and Sammy Al-Arian just yucking it up and grinning ear to ear with their families all around them. It's a beautiful thing, and that's brokered by Norquist. But that's a good point. First of all, if Huey Long got assassinated, he understood the deal.
Yes.
So I would think he perhaps for us is more good guy than bad guy.
Yeah.
Also, you're right, because anti-fascism is nationalism, which is a malignant form of patriotism.
That's right.
And we're watching it take place right now, right here.
Right.
And while the president claims that we're in this competition with Islamofascism, what he doesn't share with the rest of us is that his administration is essentially driven by neoconservatives, and while neoconservatives, yes, or that old left Trotskyite group, they have fascist additives in their movement thanks to their adherence to Leo Strauss. So you basically have fascist versus fascist there, and in the end, no matter who wins, what comes out on top.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. That's why we laughed the other day. We were saying they're so far right, they're left. And that's the joke of the whole deal. They all meet in the middle. One other thing before, I guess this gets us back into the vein of things. Talking about Darwin.
Right.
All right. Let me get this all out, and I'll throw it back to you. One, it seemed to me he was a tool.
Right.
That this really came down from, I think, his father, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Now, but what happens is these reptiles like Huxley and Galton seize upon it because they see a chance here, and I think it's because if you can apply survival of the fittest from, insensate animals. I'm sorry, we all love them, but, they don't have a soul.
Right.
If you can take that and lay it on human beings, you have every right then to cull out what you consider inconvenient or handicapped life.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, T.H. Huxley, who was the chief apologist for Darwin, himself was a fellow of the British Royal Society and was also a Freemason, and did the most to promulgate Darwinism. And of course, Galton was Charles Darwin's son, or not son. I'm sorry,
nephew, isn't it?
Cousin.
Okay.
But at any rate, another function that Darwinism served, here we have now this shift from theocratic power structures, from power structures that were basically sanctioned by the dominant ecclesiastical authorities. We have a shift from those to what you could call technocratic or scientifically legitimated power structures. But nonetheless, they remained theocratic. They remained religious. And for a theocracy to thrive, it must have a myth. And in the case of Darwinism acted as the edifying myth for a new scientistic, and I say scientistic, not scientific, that's derivative of the word scientism, which basically holds aloft the primacy of science as the absolute, determining criteria for truth, which is very dangerous. But the new scientistic theocracy was edified by the myth of Darwinism, and Darwinism itself functions as a Gnostic myth because it denies the transcendent origin of being, and it validates the metaphysical claim of self-creation. Somehow, some way, dumb, dead matter willed itself to life, and then all of a sudden became sentient. Well, with that doctrine, that metaphysical doctrine of self-creation, and by the way, metaphysical claims are the providence of religions, not of science. So that tells you where Darwinism is coming from. With that metaphysical claim of self-creation comes the religious doctrine of self-salvation. Gnosticism, which is the core precept of which is self-salvation and is an occult belief system. Gnosticism comprised a portion of the Masonic belief system.
Oh yeah.
And this is significant because the British Royal Society, which promoted Darwinism, and one of its chief apologists, T.H. Huxley, who was a Freemason and a fellow of the British Royal Society, was arguably, the British Royal Society was arguably a Masonic institute. Virtually all its founding members were Freemasons. Thus, the science that the men of the British Royal Society would promote would probably synchronize with their Gnostic beliefs. Now, Darwinism was precisely such a science. Moreover, Darwinism provided the scientific foundation for Masonry's socio-political utopianism, which was also Gnostic because of its mandate to, in Gnostic terminology, immanentize the eschaton, or bring heaven to the physical plane of the universe. And again, here we have the key crucial point, and that is that the socio-political utopians, which really qualify as secular Gnostics, as neo-Gnostics, new Gnostics, basically following the pantheistic thought of the old ancient mystery religions, basically transplant traditionally the metaphysical concepts of the Abrahamic faiths, the eschaton of heaven and hell, God. They transplant it here within the ontological plane of the physical universe.
Also, we got one comment, and then I want to go on with this, but and folks, if you want to chime in here, by all means, you know the drill. Vyzygoth at hotmail.com by email. You want to IM, Yahoo, Viz1400, MSN, Vyzygoth. Now, I'll just read it the way it is. This is from the wise guy up in Utica. He writes, Herbert Spencer, another bastard. and at any rate, going back to Darwin, now, can I say this? First of all, the ligament between Grandfather Huxley, Galton, and that crew, and Julius and Aldous happens to be who? H.G. Wells, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, let's take a look, if we can do that, at looking at the works of, which is probably the most famous work that nobody gets, like we didn't when we were in high school, and that is when the teacher in English, that would be grade 11, said, "Oh, this is a dark satire on life by Aldous Huxley." It's like, no, teach, it's not a satire. This guy was serious. Who else would tell people to love their servitude? So you got Julian, who's the first head of UNESCO. You got Aldous writing Brave New World, and you got H.G. Wells writing Open Conspiracy, New World Order, and the Shape of Things to Come.
That's right.
Do you want to discuss that continuum?
Sure. And
how they run with Darwin's theories into what? And I mean, I guess we have proponents of them now, and if you can name a few, I'm thinking that Ehrlich is probably one of them. I mean, let's talk about that mindset that got interrupted by World War II and is being taken lock, stock, and barrel, head over heels, into the 21st century.
Sure. Well, basically, some allege that H.G. Wells was a Freemason, and while that...
What a surprise.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Still,
okay.
Yeah, that's still a point of contention, that's some debate. But one thing that you can't deny is that H.G. Wells was a member of the Secretive Coefficients Club, which entertained a preoccupation with war. Many of its members were always pushing for creating some sort of war, surprise, surprise, prior to World War II with Germany, to such an extent that even one of its members, who himself was a neo-Malthusian theoretician, Bertrand Russell, finally dropped from the club. But also, H.G. Wells was also a Fabian socialist and one of the member of the Fabian Society.
Right.
But he acted as the chief mentor for Julian and Aldous Huxley. Now, interestingly enough, of course, Aldous Huxley would become the head of UNESCO. And UNESCO, in its mission statement, he basically says that it's the hope of UNESCO that a paradigm shift will eventually occur, and that what was initially unthinkable will become thinkable, and that includes a truly eugenic policy to the eugenical regimentation of society and of world civilization. Meanwhile, you got Aldous, who writes Brave New World, and in Brave New World, of course, one of the chief means of control is the narcotization of the masses. Well, surprise, surprise, Aldous goes to Timothy Leary and tells Timothy Leary that he needs to, and in his own words, quote-unquote, act as a cheerleader for evolution. And how do you do that? By disseminating LSD amongst the 60s counterculture radicals. And so you have, again, this continuum of thought. And what basically the dissemination of LSD did, and Aldous Huxley says as much in The Doors of Perception, is it lowers the subject's will to resist coercion considerably. And so you have now all of a sudden you had this basically this mentally and spiritually and emotionally population of mentally, emotionally, and spiritually invalids that was the 60s counterculture, and this enormous paradigm shift took place, and many of those counterculture boomers, basically burned out.
Hey, watch it. You know who you're talking to? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. Or they went on to become, president, to sit in the White House and hang condoms on the tree. So that was basically the shift in the paradigm here in the United States. Was you had the Brave New World being tangibly enacted right here.
Another modern manifestation of the whole thing that I think that you could appreciate, Viz, is consider the fact that that the TV today is inundated with commercials for drugs.
Yep.
And these commercials are targeting you and I, and it targets people that have no pharmacological knowledge whatsoever. It doesn't target doctors. It targets Joe Average on the street. It gets Joe Average, who once again has no pharmacological knowledge whatsoever and doesn't know what goes into these different drugs that are being advertised. It gets him to desire those and gets him to go to the doctor and say, please give me
more drugs.
Give me this drug. And he's going to go around from doctor to doctor until he does find some dope that really doesn't care and is crazy or just insane enough to write him the prescription.
Well, there is, in an unrelated venue, it was actually on ESPN like a million years ago when they had this round table of sports writers who were playing cards. One guy came out with something which was a funny line back in like 1980. It's still a funny line, but boy, does it say volumes. And he said, I forget who he's even addressing. He says they create cures for which there are no diseases.
Right.
So restless leg syndrome, folks, get up and walk.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break. And you're right, but now let me ask you this also. We all thought, when we encountered the word pharmakos in Scripture, that it meant street drugs. And it may very well mean that too. But may it not also mean what you're seeing now? People falling under the spell of medications when they can do a lifestyle change that can completely get rid of the problem if they even had it.
Well,
that's right.
It's like what you're talking about, non-existent diseases and coming up with the cures for it. The one that's very famous amongst children is ADD, and in the words of famed modern-day American playwright David Mamet, he said that attention deficit disorder back when he was a kid, that was just called daydreaming.
Oh, how dare you! Well, you raise a good case, and I'm just going down a little side road because I'm as old as dirt. I took a look back in the 70s, and I had a friend 8 years older than I, had a daughter, okay, and she was truly ADD, okay? But they finally found a really hip, a homeopathic doctor. Get this, 1977, who said, look, forget the drugs, forget Ritalin. You can do it with a diet change, stay away from the artificial, this, that, and the other things. And she was slightly neurologically impaired, but that other stuff ended. Now, he went on and on to me about the evils of Ritalin. And I'm like, I'm 26, what do I know? Okay. And I stored it in my memory. Now, it disappears for like 10 to 15 years, and what do we have now? Man, they're dishing out Ritalin like it's, Pez candies.
Yeah, and the street name for Ritalin is speed.
Yeah, you're right, because it has, that's right.
But, so, at any rate, you have Darwinism, which acts as this edifying myth for this new theocracy. And this theocracy, which, I call it the theocracy of Prima Materia, it holds aloft matter as the central truth, the sum totality of reality. Okay, so basically now they take all the constructs, the traditional constructs and concepts of the Abrahamic faith, they transplant them here in the physical universe. Okay, now this is very interesting because basically you have these people who have become lovers of the world, so to speak. And to be sure, there's nothing wrong with loving the workmanship of God, and the world qualifies as such. However, these individuals, which adhere to the socio-political utopian and neo-Gnostic tradition, and basically comprise the global elite of today, their veneration for the world qualifies as an idolatrous love. Now, in the book of 1 John, chapter 2, verses 15 to 17, it basically reads, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world, because if any man loves the world, then the love of the Father is not in him. And the world is passing away, and of course, that those who do the will of God are those who will live forever. Now, in this verse, in the original Greek version of 1 John, and I found this interesting because initially I was so like, well, what? You're telling us to hate the world, but yet it says in John 3:16 that God so loved the world. Well, you find out that in the original Greek, the word world was actually a different word. It was from the term cosmos with a K. Now, cosmos means ordered space or ordered arrangement. So it's actually a system. It's a system. It's a societal configuration. It's an ordered space, or, if you will, a new world order. This sort of order is not to be confused with legitimate order. It's a rigid, confining order that's not unlike the sort that was imposed by these socialist totalitarian systems like communism, fascism, during all these systems during the 20th century. And again, these systems transplanted the traditionally religious, metaphysical concepts here within the ontological plane of the physical universe. So, interestingly enough, you take the word establishment, which of course is the term that we use in reference to the elitist network for consolidating power and erecting this New World Order. It's derived from the Latin root stabilis, and stabilis means stable or ordered. So what we're talking about here is a system that's attempting to realign, reconfigure the world, God's creation, according to the blueprints of secular humanism, which holds aloft the anthropocentric dictum that man is the measure of all things. This is what 1 John, the verses in 1 John, is referring to the hatred of, is the hatred of this desire to create this order and to create this new regime and basically hold aloft man as its ultimate God. And to understand where this sort of order is taking us, there was an excellent poem called Creed by Steve Turner, and throughout the course of that poem, he just says, that we believe in Marx, we believe in Freud and Darwin, we believe that everything's okay, we believe sodomy's okay, we believe adultery's fun, we believe taboos are taboo, we believe that all this garbage and nonsense is just great. This is what we now hold aloft. But the poem is followed by a postscript entitled Chance, and I'll just read it, and I'll read it verbatim for the edification of the listeners. It says, quote, "If chance be the father of all flesh, disaster is his rainbow in the sky, and when you hear state of emergency, sniper kills 10, troops on rampage, whites go looting, bomb blasts school, it is but the sound of man worshiping his maker," unquote. And indeed, that's precisely what we have now with this theocracy of Prima Materia. Man has become his own maker. It's the sound of, when you have this chaos, this destruction, it is the sound of humanity basically being sacrificed on the altar of apotheosized man. It's the sound of a world that is ruled by secular humanism, which is essentially Luciferianism disseminated on the popular level under another name. And this religion basically contends that there is nothing beyond the flesh. And that is why there should be no confusion over why secular humanists are trying to, for instance, remove a replica of the Ten Commandments from a courthouse, or why they tried to expunge all the elements of religion, all the iconography, anything that exalts the Lord, anything that exalts Jesus Christ from public view. They cannot have any other God to compete with their God, which is man in the process of becoming God himself.
I'm going to get one more question in because that's all the time I know we're going to have. It seems to me when you talk about this deification or self-deification, I'm guessing that that's okay for the elites, but it's not going to work for everybody, though they all might shoot. Okay, and here's the thing. People criticize Christianity for being communistic. I don't believe so because the individual is always held as precious.
Right, exactly.
But where we're going is this communitarianism, this collectivism, where not every life is precious. Some lives are dispensable, and like what Wells wrote in The Time Machine, are we going to see this oligarchy, although very large perhaps, of elites, and everybody else is the Morlocks to do the wet work?
That's right. You're going to have a class of Eloi and a class of Morlocks. And that's the beauty of evolution. That's the beauty of how it was used as the vehicle for this religion. Because as anybody can tell you, in the words of Ernest Haeckel, himself an evolutionist, and the person responsible for indoctrinating Adolf Hitler into social Darwinism, he said that evolution is, in its strictest sense, aristocratic. Mm-hmm. And that is because hierarchically, some people are going to develop, some people are going to evolve into something more before others will. And so the rest of them have to be cast off to the wayside. And that's why the elite belief system is this just hideous amalgam of both anthropocentrism, that is a man-centered religion where man is held aloft as God, but at the same time racial self-loathing where we despise our own humanity and in the a Nietzschean context attempt to overcome our own humanity and become something else, become the Ubermensch, become superhumanity, become God.
All right, guys, I tell you, we're running down on time. One more time, again, let us know what's out there and how they can get there.
Sure. Well, the new book, actually it's the expanded revised edition of The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship, is available at www.booksearch.com. Our web page is www.conspiracyarchive, all one word, /commentary with a capital C, /Collins with a capital C, .php. And, of course, we're regular columnists for the ACL Report, which is the official magazine of A Closer Look, and you can get that at www.acloserlook.com.
All right, now we agreed we'll get together again on October 11th.
Absolutely.
All right, good deal, and I'm going to give you a ring in about 5 minutes if I can to talk about things that we need to talk off.
Sure thing.
All right, guys, thanks very much.
Hey, thank you.
All right, bye-bye now.